By 2030, more than 1 in 5 Americans are going to be over the age of 65, and the global life expectancy is expected to rise from 73.33 years as of today, all the way to 77 years old in 2050. With such a large proportion of people retiring, there's always going to be questions surrounding retirement, such as how much can I withdraw, how much money should I have saved for retirement, and will Social Security still be there? But that's actually not the #1 retirement trap that's out there. In this video, we're going to discuss what the #1 retirement trap that's not so obvious is, as well as some of the pitfalls and numbers that you should know when it comes to retirement. All right, so can you guess what it is? The #1 retirement trap that nobody talks about. It's actually not a financial trap, but more of a psychological one. And the trap is going into retirement without knowing how much is enough and constantly wanting more. Everybody always wants more money, especially in the society that we live in, and I think that drives a harmful type of mindset when it comes to our quality of life, as well as deciding when to retire. Also, if you spend your entire life working and accumulating assets, trying to grow your 401k as well as your portfolio, and then all of a sudden you have a hard transition into retirement life, it can be kind of a little bit hard to shut that off. Your habits are already ingrained. Couple this with the fact that when you have more free time in retirement, a lot of people just assume that you're automatically going to need more money, which kind of perpetuates this thought of not having enough and constantly wanting more. But here's what's fascinating for the average American, and I think you guys will actually find this pretty hilarious. It's not like your lifestyle is going to change completely once you're retired. The Wall Street Journal looked into how Americans actually like to spend their retirement, and they found that while many people thought that they were going to go and travel the world and do crazy things when they retired, the reality was far from that. So here's a visual from the Labor Department, and you can see that most retirees here spend most of their days relaxing and leisure at 6.24 hours, sleeping at 9.01 hours, and watching TV at an average of 4.5 hours per day, which also includes screen time from a phone or a tablet. No wonder you're always getting Facebook posts shared from your mom or perhaps your Uncle Susan about the latest lawnmower from Shark Tank.
I think you're doing the right thing, but I'm out.
Only about a half an hour per day was spent socializing or communicating, and working still comprised about 0.8 hours per day. And this is actually a problem because according to a Harvard happiness study, they actually found that retirees don't miss working, they miss the people. It's the relationships that are actually going to truly define how happy you are in retirement, but sadly, the average American age 65 and older spent more time watching TV than a decade ago, but less time socializing according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So there are two stories that I want to share with you guys today in terms of the retirement trap that we're talking about. The first story is about my father, but if you have a parent that's also retired, you may actually find this story quite relatable. If you watched my video that I posted about a year ago on the Chinese money saving secret, you would know that my dad came from China in the 1940s and 50s. He grew up in absolute poverty, and he was able to immigrate here and make himself a pretty good life. He is now 92 years old, has money saved in his retirement portfolio, yet he still feels bad about spending money. To give you an illustration of this, my dad would rather eat frozen meals at home from Costco rather than going out to a restaurant for a proper meal. And even though I ran the numbers on his portfolio, he could definitely afford to eat out 2, 3, maybe even 5 times per week without ever running out of money. But yet here we are, it's just not something that he's used to doing. And in his own words, he'd rather not spend money on something he doesn't, quote, need. So in his opinion, the marginal value that he gets from going out to eat rather than eating at home is not enough to justify that spend. But the thing I always say to him, and I don't know if you have a parent that also experiences this, like, you don't take your money with you in the end. So what's the point of all this saving? Once you become financially free, the accumulation of money just to have more money's sake is simply just a sport at that point. And speaking of sports, that actually brings me to my second story, and it has to do with goalposts, but probably not in the way that you're thinking about it. Let me give you an example from my personal life. Even though I am not retired, it will still illustrate the same psychological concept. So last year I hit 1 million subscribers on this YouTube channel. It was a brilliant time, and I celebrated with my friends, and I was pretty much living on a high for the next 3, 4, or even 5 days. But here's the thing, about a week or two later, I just kind of returned to my baseline level of happiness. 3.5 years of consistent uploading, strategizing, and just basically creating content on the channel, and I finally reached my dream of hitting 1 million subscribers. But guess what? 2 weeks later, I wanted 2 million subscribers. The takeaway here is that the goalpost will always be moving, and if you're trying to chase that goalpost but you're never satisfied in your life, then you won't really be happy when it comes to that one day you quit your job and you finally retire. How many times have you heard from your friends, your coworkers, or perhaps your family, hey, once I make $100,000, then I'll be happy. Or once my retirement portfolio hits $1 million, that's when I'll retire. It usually comes in the format of once X, then Y. And the scariest one is once I make a certain amount of money, then I will be happy. But this is just simply called hedonic adaptation. So humans actually have this tendency to return to a baseline level of happiness regardless of life's ups or downs. In my case, the subscriber milestone, once I hit 1 million subscribers, I quickly returned to that baseline level of happiness. And I'm sure that if I ever hit 2 million subscribers, the same thing will happen as well. So here's a great chart of what it looks like. You can see that our baseline happiness here in blue will always stay the same. And even as we're acquiring new things or hitting new goals, we can become happy just for a short period of time. So in this example specifically, you can see that once we get a new car, our baseline level of happiness goes up, but then after some time, we kind of revert to the mean, the blue line right here. Our car breaks down, perhaps we're at a low, but then we slowly return back to baseline level of happiness. The point here is that we're just going to adapt to whatever circumstance is out there. And so regardless of life's ups or downs, what we really want to be doing is trying to find contentment and fulfillment in the present moment. So instead of focusing on phrases or things that are insecurities, such as I need my portfolio to hit a certain number before retiring, or I need to wait until my stocks vest until I can retire comfortably, we should really be reflecting on how much we actually need to live in retirement. And once we hit that number, we shouldn't feel too guilty about spending that money in order to basically live a good life. In my dad's case, it might actually look like spending more of his retirement portfolio in order to enjoy the fruits of his labor. But his problem is that even though his retirement portfolio can definitely cover a nicer quality of life, he's not taking that up. And I think therein lies the issue. My takeaway here is that you want to get to your retirement number, and then once you get there, you don't want to feel guilty about spending that money because that's basically what you planned for. And if you don't know your number, that's where we actually need to figure it out. And the general consensus is that the safe withdrawal rate from any retirement portfolio is 4%, and this is known as the 4% rule. That means if you have a retirement portfolio of $1 million, you should be able to withdraw 4% of that indefinitely every single year, so $40,000 a year. The assumption is that as long as your portfolio is split 50-50 between stocks and bonds, you will never run out of money, even in the worst performing stretches of the stock market. This assumes a 30-year retirement window, so if you actually want to retire early, the math will slightly change, and I've actually made a video addressing this exact situation, which I will link down below, or you can check it out after this video. Okay, so this chart here shows you the percentage of success of not running out of money depending on how long you need the money for and your asset allocation. Along the top row here is the asset allocation split, so the left number being stocks and the right number being bonds. So 100-0 here is 100% stocks and 0% bonds, and then we have 50-50, which would be 50% stocks and bonds, self-explanatory, and then 0-100 is 0% stocks and 100% bonds. Now, what's really interesting is you can see the success percentages here. 100% in this case in green would mean that there is absolutely no historical situation that shows you would ever run out of money for the given time period and asset allocation. So if you had a portfolio allocation of 50-50 in stocks and bonds and you withdrew 4% a year of a hypothetical balance every single year for 15 years, there was no back-tested scenario that said you would ever run out of money, ever. And for most of these allocations for 30 years, you're mostly going to be in the green here. So as in over 90 to 95% of never running out of money. So the takeaway here is that if we're looking to retire and have our money last about 30 years, we should be heavily favoring the 50-50 split. That's going to give us the best chances of not running out of money within that 30 years. But how much do you actually need exactly? The key thing that we want to figure out is how much we're spending in retirement, and that way our retirement portfolio can actually be a means to a quality life and not just a number. If you're able to start out with an end in mind and then work backwards, then this becomes a lot easier. So Fidelity has a famous rule that they like to call the retirement income replacement ratio rule, which is definitely a mouthful, but I'll explain to you how it works. So this table here sums up basically how much you should aim to replace your salary with in retirement, and you can see the annual income ranges on the left here. If you make less than 50K per year, for example, on the left, you'll want to multiply that salary. So let's just pretend it's 50K, multiply that by 80%. that's gonna be $40,000 per year in retirement. That's a good rule of thumb for how much you're gonna be spending every single year. If your salary is $70K per year, you'll probably wanna plan to spend around $52,500 per year, or 75% of that salary in retirement. Of course, this does really depend on the exact lifestyle and income that you currently have. So if you do make less than 50K per year, maybe you wanna stick to their 80% rule. However, if you make like a crazy amount of money, say you make 500K per year, I would argue that you could probably live off a lot less. For most people though, they suggest sticking between 55 to 80% of their annual salary as their retirement income replacement ratio salary. This all depends on you. If you are someone who's super active and you know that you're gonna wanna be traveling the world and doing crazy experiences when you retire, then you might actually need more money. But if we remember the Wall Street Journal article from earlier, it's likely that we're probably just gonna be sitting at home watching TV reruns of the OC and Breaking Bad anyway. And you'll have an easier time predicting how much spend you actually need in retirement if you're at least tracking how much you're spending before retirement as well. I'm personally a huge proponent of at least knowing exactly how much money is leaving your bank account every single month or every single year, and that way you have a good idea of how much your cost of living actually costs you. Before retirement, if you're only spending about 30K per year in expenses, then you know that your portfolio size needs to be 750K. That allows you to withdraw 4% from it every single year in perpetuity. The other nice thing that you're gonna have at your disposal, for example, if you live in America, is Social Security. So those start to kick in at the age of 62, and the average benefit is $18.25 per month. Usually retirees will spend less money on clothing, food, and housing as well, but your healthcare expenses might go up. Luckily though, at the age of 65, usually you can qualify for Medicare, which will help bring some of those healthcare expenses down. Some other options for retirees can include moving to a less expensive location so that their cost of living is lower, or perhaps building some passive income streams in order to help supplement their retirement. If you aren't at retirement age yet, which most of my viewers are probably not, then what you really want to do is take the time right now to try to build up some passive income sources so that when you retire, you can have a leg up. Some examples could be number one, a rental property. Perhaps it pays you $24,000 per year after expenses, and that can give you a margin of safety for your retirement. Number two could be some dividend income from your retirement portfolio. So I famously have a dividend income portfolio. It pays me about $600 a month right now, or $7,200 per year. And there's no way that I'm gonna be giving that up even through retirement. And number three, while this is not exactly passive, if you have a hobby that you like doing or teaching other people, perhaps you could turn it in a way to make money through retirement. If you like working on cars, bikes, or maybe you like gardening, for example, you can help other people with their vehicles or with their gardens, and maybe you make a little bit of side income just to help, offset your cost of living. So to recap here, number one, don't chase a bigger portfolio just because you think you need it. Make sure to run the numbers. Number two is that the goalpost is always moving. So whenever you do hit that certain number in your retirement portfolio, or perhaps you change your status to retired, it's better to look internally for that source of fulfillment and happiness. Number three, use the 4% rule to figure out how much you can safely withdraw in retirement. And number four, knowing how much you spend is gonna be so helpful in this process. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to check out my next video called The #1 Wealth Killer Nobody Talks About. It's about something that could be killing your budget that sits in plain sight. So I will see you guys in that video or a future video on this channel. All right, thank you.